I got my first tattoo when I just turned 19, a kind of folk art, naive rabbit design on my left arm that I drew. This is a picture of it here. I think of it as my spirit animal. Rabbits have been important to me in lots of ways growing up, and at the time I got it, I wanted that kind of grounding and almost protective presence that a spirit animal represents. I'm now 21 and have more tattoos, mostly designed by me, apart from a Hockney drawing and a Schultz drawing, including my fingers and freckles on my face, and I think my finger tattoos, shown on the right here, are often one of the first things that people notice about me. Since I found artist Lily Jenkins at a studio local to my family back home in Winchester, she's done all of mine and my dad's tattoos, excluding my freckles, done by another artist at the same studio, Ravi Lee. The studio, Sacred Garden, is female-owned and led, and talking to the artist there while being tattooed has inspired me to pursue tattooing myself, as well as to think about the place of women in the industry. I want to explore the attitudes towards both female tattoo artists and women who have tattoos, and the views of the artists themselves and their experiences. As I said, I've designed most of my tattoos and also drawn designs for others, as shown in these two pictures. I think the style of tattoos I'm drawn to and I like to design are similar to my other illustration works, with a focus on a kind of handmade, naive warmth. People have been tattooing for thousands of years. The earliest known evidence of tattooed skin was on a mummified Bronze Age man from around 3300 BC, Otzi the Iceman, as shown in these pictures here. Tattooed women seem to have been around for as long as tattooed men. Quote, in several non-European cultures, their existence has often been a continuous and accepted cultural tradition. Any prejudice or judgment surrounding tattooed women, and indeed tattooed people in general, is a relatively recent Western phenomenon. Quote, it is not the tattooed ladies themselves, it is the social reaction to them. In the late 19th and early 20th century, many tattooed women in Europe, and particularly the US, became circus acts. Shown in these images here are two of the most famous tattooed circus women, Irene Woodward, or La Belle Irene, and Betty Broadbent, quote, one of the century's most photographed, best-loved tattooed women. By the 1920s, there were hundreds of tattooed people working in travelling circuses. Tattoo historian Matt Lodder writes, in the 1910s, tattooing had become a bona fide youth culture craze in Britain and America. Although not yet widely accepted, tattoos were becoming more and more popular, so much so that during the Great Depression, quote, hordes of people went under the needle in hopes of finding alternative income as a circus attraction, thereby somewhat oversaturating the market. In her book, Bodies of Subversion, the first written history of women's tattoo culture, Mifflin writes, quote, few of these women selected their own designs. They were blank canvases that the male artists who tattooed them could have control over. Although this is certainly a contrast to women's tattoo culture today, it doesn't mean these women were entirely powerless or without agency in these situations. Many of these women chose to get tattooed because they knew it would give them more of a life of freedom, self-sufficiency, and adventure. Shown here is, quote, one of the last great circus ladies, Cindy Ray, real name Bev Nicholas. In her autobiography, she writes, tattooing for me has opened my way to the whole world. Some learnt to tattoo in their own right, often wives or girlfriends of male tattoo artists who therefore had access to equipment and teaching. Artists Maud Wagner and Jessie Knight, shown here, are considered the first female tattoo artists in the US and Britain, respectively. Wagner learned to hand poke from her husband, Gus, but her practice was, quote, largely avocational. Knight, trained by her father, began tattooing in 1921 when she was 17. She was Britain's only predominant female artist for decades. She ran multiple tattoo studios in largely military or naval areas. Poems she wrote in her diary about, quote, the old skin-digging game reveal some of the stereotyping and reactions she faced. Quote, they, the other tattoo artists, want to bump off this short arsehole bitch. They call me this, they call me that, they call me a vampire and a nasty cat, but a tattoo artist I'll always be. Her writing also clearly shows the resilience female artists needed. This sign on the right that she wrote and displayed in her studio suggests her sense of humour in combating prejudice. Throughout the 60s and 70s, in accordance with a rise in feminism, it became more common for women to have tattoos, although female artists were still scarce. Janis Joplin was one of the first celebrities to show off her tattoos in public and in photo shoots. Here in this picture you can see a small heart on her chest and a floral bracelet that she designed herself. The trends in tattoos that women were getting were very different to the more traditional male styles. Mifflin writes, quote, "The use of nature imagery and Art Deco motifs was a way many women artists feminized tattoo to make it their own. Embracing feminine tradition was a way of renouncing masculine convention. Hearts, butterflies, and flowers became staples still evident in tattoo culture today." By the 90s, tattooing had become much more mainstream and was no longer a predominantly white working-class phenomenon. The age range also expanded. With this came a change in the kind of designs people were having tattooed. Pop culture symbols like Betty Boop, politically charged imagery, tribal and biochemical styles. These designs on the right are by Jackie Gresham, the first prominent black female tattoo artist in the US, and this restyling of white American icons like Betty Boop became popular with her black female clients. For women, one symbol that became particularly prolific was the uterus, really emphasizing the draw towards feminine designs. Though female artists were much more common, they didn't get the same recognition as their male counterparts still. I'd like to draw attention now to a particular female-owned and led studio, Sacred Garden in Winchester, Hampshire, where I've been tattooed many times. I interviewed Daisy Pike-Quantick, one of the owners of the studio, and Lily Jenkins and Ravi Lee, two artists who work there who I've been tattooed by, about their experiences as women in the tattoo industry and as heavily tattooed women. In this picture you can see all the artists at Sacred Garden along with Tom, a barber who shares their shop space. They all work in different styles. These images show some recent tattoos they've all done. Lily, whose work is on the left, says she thinks that her work is, quote, historically predominantly masculine, inspired by traditional artists like Sailor Jerry, Spalding and Rogers, and Higgs. It feels similar to early female artists in the 20th century like Jessie Knight, and the tattoos Lily herself has are in that same kind of traditional style. This panther tattoo definitely fits in with the same kind of tradition. Daisy and Ravi's work is perhaps more stereotypically feminine. Ravi said she likes tattooing, quote, anything witchy, going back to those natural motifs that emerged in the 60s and 70s, embracing feminine tradition. This tattoo in the middle by her definitely links to that, showing a love potion. Daisy's work is also often based on nature and has a softer feel, thinner outlines. She also does portraits of women, and this tattoo on the right by her is of Athena, goddess of war, and has a kind of softness as well as showing her power and strength. Clearly there's no one way to tattoo as a woman in the industry, yet these three artists all feel that their work or their experiences have in some way been influenced by their gender. When I asked them what they feel people's attitudes towards female artists are, much of their feedback was positive. Lily, shown tattooing here on the left, said that she felt female artists were seen as, quote, softer, less aggressive, more empathetic, and that women especially seemed to feel more comfortable going to a same-sex artist. Ravi, shown on the right, similarly said that she feels there is a, quote, women supporting women moment currently in the industry, and that she's seen a rise in young female clients as they feel comfortable coming to her and to the studio. Quote, I think the growth of female artists and safe space studios have allowed women to feel safe getting tattooed. Mifflin writes about this in Bodies of Subversion, saying that as tattooing became more popular in the 60s and 70s, quote, women were drawn to female artists, that they were seen as safe, gentler with the needle, and more personally accommodating. This idea of a safe space was the main message that came through when I asked for the artist's vision for the studio. Daisy, one of the owners, said that she wants it to be, quote, a creative hub where anyone can feel welcome and heard, and Lily said the team pride themselves on being friendly, approachable, and safe. This is clearly an important part of women's tattoo culture, perhaps as a backlash against traditional, intimidating male studios and environments, like those that early female artists would have worked in or women would have been tattooed in. As shown in these recent pictures of the studio, it's a very open space with lots of natural light, and the green and pink colour scheme make it feel a lot softer than the stereotypical kind of dark black basement studios. Ewan Thompson writes, quote, "New generations of tattooists are creating a different physical environment that contrasts with that of old school street shops, and women are at the forefront of this change." Despite these positive aspects of being a female artist, the industry still does not come without prejudice. Ewan Thompson writes, in, quote, "Male-dominated professions, such as tattooing, quote, harassment towards women may be common as a manner of testing their endurance for surviving in a masculinized, hostile environment, much like how Jessie Knight had to present an intimidating and strong exterior to work in the mid-20th century. Daisy said that the most prejudice she felt being a female artist was from other male tattoo artists, that they, quote, disregard her as a young woman. And Ravi said that her experience of a tattoo convention made her feel it was still very much a, quote, boys' club. She also detailed negative experiences with male clients, saying that tattooed women are still, quote, fetishized, and some men will only be tattooed by women, quote, definitely in a creepy way. She said they would, quote, flirt and make inappropriate comments that I can guarantee they would not say to a male artist or in another type of workplace. Mifflin writes, quote, "Neither the influx of women into this industry nor the swelling numbers of tattooed women outside it has succeeded in unhitching women's tattoos from their sexuality, a link that doesn't exist for men. Merely being a tattooed woman unwittingly invites this kind of fetishization that should not be seen as acceptable, particularly in women's place of work." Ewan Thompson writes, quote, "For tattooed women, their subcultural identity is one that is often misread. They're visually representing the stories of their lives, however, strangers may read the ink as antisocial outbursts." Lily, who has 2 young children, said, quote, "As a mother, I get judged a lot more than a mother without tattoos. People give me 10 times more negative looks when I'm out with my children than if I was out on my own." Despite tattoos becoming more and more mainstream, there is definitely still prejudice. Both her and Daisy said they felt judged and watched in more professional settings, and Daisy said she feels the need to overcompensate with her clothes. Mifflin says, quote, "No form of skin modification is as layered with meaning as tattooing, especially for women. As I've explored, women in tattooing have fought for their place in the industry throughout history, combating masculine environments and traditions to evolve their own practice and meaning. Now, many women feel safer both getting tattoos and working as tattoo artists, perhaps because of a women-supporting women culture that fights against the stereotypes. Yet female artists may still be looked down upon, and women with tattoos are still sexualized or seen to be, quote, mutilating their bodies and making them ugly. Clearly, there's still a lot of progress to be made in the industry, but with pioneering women working to create safe and welcoming studios like Sacred Garden, things can continue to change for the better."